by saying that some one thing that's kind of cool that I've been discovering is that I started this channel out by saying that I was wanting to build the channel as I create it, or build the plane as I fly it. And I probably shouldn't say I, because a lot of the better weight and insight that I think I'm conveying is more so extrapolating and making connections out of different sources. And I've done my best to cite those sources as they occur to me when I'm speaking. And one of my favorite scholars, an actual knight from England, Sir John Woodrow, who was also a justice on the High Court of India at one point. He studied under aesthetics gurus and hermits in India, as I understand, and he translated some of the solemn teachings of those type of people from India into works written in English, to make them available for posterity for both members of the Indian community and members of the Western community in the world abroad, to preserve some of the value of that lineage and heritage, which at that point he appreciated as potentially being close to being lost at different times because of some of the secrecy that was involved in the guru profession. Is that secrecy is understood to be necessary, and he speaks onto some of the properties of concealing wisdom and insight, and only enunciating it where is it appropriate, as being profound. And he speaks to some of that reality, yet he somehow felt it necessary to preserve some of that teaching and capture it. But he did not express the full scope of his understanding in those works, because he recognized that there was a certain detriment or danger in presenting some of the deepest of what he thought to be solemn truths to a general audience that could be interpreted, refashioned, and then maybe either abused or misrepresented so as to abuse going forward. But he leveled a lot of wisdom in there. And he actually published under the name Arthur Avalon, which was a pseudonym and a homage to his different collective sources, living and no longer living. That understanding and that insight he's providing is yet greater than he himself, and even his ability to articulate and enunciate, and through either scholarship or literacy in writing. He's also giving credit to that, because you could say that his facility with writing would also be a function of some of the different teachers that he had in his life. And I think he cited one of those teachers that he had in England, who was the teacher had given him some type of challenge about to, like, they were saying something about something to do with Christianity when he was very young. And in the and because they being in England in the late 1800s, and he was, I think he would have been privileged to a form of education at that time. And one of his teachers they said something about it was something to do with the Holy Trinity. And they were somewhere between him as a brilliant, gifted, open-minded, nubile student, inclined and destined to learn about world cultures and world religion, but at that point not having experienced anything outside of England, I think. And then he had a thoughtful teacher who said he pointed out something to do with a Holy Trinity, in that by playing with the expression of what's considered a Holy Trinity, that what they were referring to, there was something of a pun within the expression, and so that created a moment of open-mindedness and enlightenment, that's not wrong, but there may be more to think or more to entertain to go through the full process of realizing what it is to have faith and propriety and in beauty and love. And so that moment was pivotal for what became Arthur Avalon, at that point being Mr. Woodrow, not yet a knight, I don't think. And some of the things that he offered, he pointed that out in a small note in one of his books. And I think some of us have had teachers like that. My mother is one of the kinder people that a person may be privileged, may be fortunate to know, according to many people I've met who have known my mother and me, but would say different things about my mother when she's not there. Landlords, business people, my bosses, insurance adjusters, my friends, some of my friends coming from maybe unsavory experiences, and what kind of growth would come from that. Citing my mom as being very kind, and then me myself having been in her life for the greater part of the number 4, of the grown-up version of number 4. and not thinking none the wiser. Just a very kind person. Also, not wanting me to be touching guns when I was a little kid, and taking many beautiful pictures of the community where I grew up in the Southwest, a diverse community in the Southwest. And some of those pictures she took were enlightening and they were love. But her essence and her, I've said in other videos that sometimes women bring things out of men and in people, the best of them, where they can be helping them without directly interfering with them. Similar, sometimes a woman can draw you to you. Osho has said that women are the truer seducers because they don't try to seduce people as much as men. And so a woman, by not attempting to seduce a person, can exactly seduce a person. And that's just another thing of how women can inspire and bring the best out of people. And my mom brought the best out of people in pictures. So there's many beautiful, enlightening pictures that I don't know had those pictures been possible without her spirit. But the greater thing is that she had a teacher in school who had been a nun, and she had a, I think it's called parochial. That's like a religious education. And I think that had been more popular in times past, and it's still popular, but it had been more so in times past. And she just had a nun who would ride horses, a horseback riding nun who was also a photographer and was also outspoken in the like the period of the flower generation, a politically outspoken, enlightened nun horsebacking with as a photographer who is interested in learning and challenging the status quo and educating students who are benefited by the status quo and could be appreciated as being representatives of the status quo to further function within and add to the status quo. That nun in there was challenging them to think broader and outside the box. Both that nun and that teacher that Mr. Woodruff had were both similar, and they were telling someone to think outside the box is what they told someone, and it amounted to later Sir John Woodruff, then Arthur Avalon, and what he leveled, and it also amounted to my mother being a very kind and loving person, no greater or lesser than anyone else's mom, because there is none greater than MOM, and there is none different within MOM. Even Arthur Avalon said that in going back in India, it's understood that seldom has there been a bad mother. There may have been a poor mother, or a destitute mother, or a compromised mother, or whether substance or circumstance, but there had not been a bad mother, according to Arthur Avalon, and I would stamp that. So there is none greater among mothers either, and there is none greater than MOM. So my mom is MOM, but someone had taught her to think outside the box is how she came to be her form of MOM, which is a great form, but no less or greater than any other MOM, because MOM is MOM. But what I was wanting to say is that so I was talking a little bit about like neoteny is to be very the combination between being corrupt and being juvenile, and that's a deep form of bonding, like what we see between a mother cat and a cub, and then I was also given another reference to, I saw recently some training footage of like some military people training that looked like they were highly skilled in military, and they were running up and down a field with a bazooka and a machine gun. And I was thinking that one is that they would appear neotenous. Neo is like baby, and like what attracts like a parent to their cub, or even have a animal respect a cub, a juvenile human being, or a human being expect a juvenile animal. That propensity to appreciate what is inexperienced is called neotenous, as a form of aesthetic in beauty is neoteny. And sometimes things can be paradoxical in like the corruption, the paradox between corruption and neoteny. So as I see these military people running down the field with the bazooka, I'm wondering, does that person actually understand how awful of an experience that a bazooka could be experienced as to another person or themselves? And would they be that gung ho about training with the bazooka if they did understand? Would make them appear maybe neotenous if they didn't understand. If they did understand, and I'm not saying they couldn't or did not understand, that would make them also fundamentally wicked, or at least they could operate in what would come across and be felt as very mean to someone else. That dichotomy is also a paradox in appearing very neotenous to be running up and down a field with a bazooka, and very corrupt to be comfortable doing that. And that together is an aesthetic and a look, and that might be about what's so captivating and spellbinding about looking at people who are trained as combatants. But I